there is just no respite from the gloom surrounding the Toon, and you have to feel sorry for them after tonight. At every turn, Steve, it's just bad news, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously not a great start to the season. This was going to be a difficult game anyway. You know, you can argue, does Rafa play his strongest team just so they can get that first win? Or then does he give the people that he's came out and sort of said this is an opportunity to give players, you know, fringe players, an opportunity for them to maybe push themselves a little bit towards being first choice? Look, they're out of the cup, it's disappointing. But believe it or not, I think it is a case that Rafa will be disappointed, so will the players, so will the fans. But I think the manager's more or less concentrating on what can he do in the league, as early as it is. I think that's the crux of it, really. I think it's a disappointing result. We all would like a cup run, but the league is the most important thing.
7 changes, Craig. Did that surprise you at all?
Yeah, it did. Just due to the fact of, it was a good point Steve made as well, they've had a bad start to the season, but they've had a tough start. They've had, you have Chelsea, you have Spurs and that. I thought they were very disappointing. I watched them live against Cardiff. They disappointed me to no end there. I thought they were really, really poor, and they were very lucky to get a draw. Right, they could have won it at the end, but I thought Cardiff deserved to win on the day. But looking at this game, I just thought, good opportunity to just get up and running. You know, 1 or 2 plays, start with Rondon. All right, he got a goal, but get him, start him at the start of the game, get his confidence going, get the team's confidence going. And it just, for me, my concern was, all right, it's just another defeat. I don't see him having a problem this year. I know it is doom and gloom at this present moment. I think the manager will keep him above that relegation zone. This is a good opportunity to, the 50-odd years since a club like Newcastle has won a trophy. Good opportunity for them to, clubs like them to go and attack this tournament, because realistically, you do have a chance in this tournament. A lot of the big clubs, especially the ones, that are in Europe now, want to stay away from this tournament.
You imagine if Newcastle had gone on, or even won the Carabao Cup this season, why not have a go? Because so many teams are playing weakened sides.
But, in my time with Rafa, being at Liverpool, he never played a strong team in this tournament. He always, because I started in most of the games. He never played the strongest team in this tournament. He always seen it as, and don't forget, we were in Europe at the time as well. So maybe, you could understand it as players, but he would do it in the FA Cup as well to a certain degree. And then when it got to the later stages, then he would go with a stronger team. But
you look at it, Craig. He's aware of the league table. They play Man City at the weekend, I believe. Mm-hmm. You have Arsenal, United coming up in the next 4, 5, 6 games. He needs a win. They need a win to instill confidence amongst the players.
I agree with that.
You've been a manager, Mark. So put yourself in the shoes of Rafa tonight. What is the dilemma he faced, and what would you have done?
I understand Steve's comments dead right. The league has to be the main focus. It has to have the priority. He hasn't got the strength of depth of squad to field 2 stronger teams. But you look at that league table, Man City at the weekend, another very tough one. He's aware of what he faces there. You could easily find yourself 5, 6, 7 games in the season with 1, 2, 3 points on the board, and you're in trouble. So you're saying about avoiding the relegation fight. The games come thick and fast in the Premier League. Rafa will know be acutely aware that he needs that first win to instill some confidence.
Yeah, but look, a club like Newcastle have about 20-odd players that he would consider first-team players.
No Shelby.
Well,
yeah,
no Shelby doesn't sell, but
he's used 20 players already this season.
But he has his injuries, but they've got the League Cup, FA Cup, League. 38 games, in the league. It's early on in the season, but why can't you play your strongest team? One, because they need a win. They need a win for confidence. Cardiff was similar last night, but maybe I can understand, because a promoted team is always very difficult. All right, Newcastle only been in they were in the Premier League last year. They flirt with relegation. They've been relegated twice in a period where actually you look at Newcastle getting relegated was beyond any of our imaginations when I was there. It was just that's just not going to happen. The club's too, they have too good a players. It's too big a club. But we found out over the last few years that hasn't been the case. So the win was very important. Man City now coming up. You're going to lose. I'll tell you, Newcastle will lose that game. I don't care if they go and pack everyone behind the ball yet again, which they probably will do, they'll end up losing that game.
How does this get better? Because right now it just seems there's only negativity surrounding the club. The whole situation.
It gets better. It's going to be very difficult for it to get better. I mean, if you look at the teams that Newcastle have got coming up in the league, fans are very, very frustrated with the fact of what happened in the transfer market, or lack of, shall we say. There's a lot of criticism that's been coming out about Newcastle fans and them sort of saying, oh, they think they've got a God-given right and all this kind of stuff. That is absolute nonsense. It's not the case. You get people coming on, on different sort of media outlets and sort of saying this and that about the club, and they haven't got a clue what's going on. The fact is, the Newcastle fans are disappointed because they can't see the club moving forward. They can't see the club progressing in any way. Newcastle,
under the present owner.
Yeah, because they had a perfect opportunity at the end of last season. They finished 10th. Now, there's an opportunity now to progress. But the manager, Newcastle made 123 million from the Premier League and the TV last year, plus 43.5, I think it was, from, selling likes of Mitrovic and people like that, Marino, people like that. Now, Mr. Ashley was on Sky, and he'd actually, used this as a platform by sort of saying Rafa Benitez will get every penny generated. That hasn't been the case. He'd said that he wants to sell the club. That hasn't been the case. Or the club's, he's put it up and he's got it on for too much money. Now, Rafa Benitez, for me, should have at least been given the money that he got for selling the players. He didn't. And this what knocks the fans, in a way, is because Rafa Benitez has spent 13 million on 3 players. 3 players, which doesn't get you anywhere, really, in this day and age. Let's be honest.
Doesn't get you a lot.
It doesn't. Now, Newcastle fans are not asking for, like Mike Ashley said, which is he can't compete with your Manchester Cities and that. Well, yeah, of course, we're not expecting them to compete with Manchester Cities or Liverpool's or Chelsea's or Arsenal's or Man United's. We're not. But we're just, we'd like to compete with the rest of the teams. Now, spending £13 million on 3 players isn't going to get you a great deal. But when you look at teams like...
well, it's actually a little bit more than that, isn't it?
Well, yeah, you've got, on 3 players, but then the 4 players, you've got 9.5 from Mutu. But...
he's not been given a lot to spend.
He hasn't been given a lot. But when you look at the other clubs, and I'm talking about, just say Huddersfield, for instance. Huddersfield, and fair play to Huddersfield, they've gone out and they've spent 17.5 on 1 player. Bournemouth, broke their record and paid 15, I think, for Ibe. And then they've only just paid 25 million for another player in the summer. And Newcastle, if you look at Newcastle, Rafa hasn't been given the opportunity to bring players in. You've got a first-class manager there, and he's not being given the tools to actually work, the stuff that he can work. If he's been given finance and the club's finishing 10th, how good can they be if he's given a little bit of money behind him? Because at the moment, he's working with his hands behind his back.
Must be golden, Jeff. I think also the promoted teams, Fulham and Wolves coming up, and their activity in the transfer market.
100 million.
Magnificent activity. The players they've acquired, the starts of the season. It must be golden for the fans of Rafa, of course.
Well, as I said, them teams that I've mentioned, Newcastle's record, I mean, before Ashley came, it's been mentioned that we were playing in the Champions League. I think we'd finished in 10 years, we'd finished 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 7th, not in that order. Playing 2 FA Cup finals, 2 semi-finals. You play in the Champions League, the UEFA Cup. We had the most expensive striker in the world, which was Alan Shearer, and this is 96. They break the record again in 2005 for Michael Owen. Then that's it. It stopped. So it's golden for the fans when they can see all these other teams breaking the record, when Newcastle's record is 16 million. That's not good.
Can I ask you, Mark said earlier, he can see potentially you could be 7-8 games in without a win. Would Mike Ashley sack Rafa Benitez, do you think?
Well, at the moment, I have to be honest, I think that, the fans are getting behind the manager, the fans are getting behind the teams.
You can clearly see. You can clearly see that.
But if he wants an all-out mutiny, I think that which would happen if you got rid of him, because he is one that the fans are pinning the hopes on, really. He is Newcastle's biggest asset, as far as I'm concerned. So why would you get rid of your best asset? And I think if you lose him, and you haven't got the strength and depth of quality, which Newcastle haven't got. They've got great, really good pros that work really hard and, basically do to the letter what Benitez says, and that's why they got 10th. If they lose him, then they are really struggling.
Would Rafa resign?
No. I'd be very, very surprised if he resigns. I
Why
think
don't
he'd
you
see
think
his
he would
contract.
resign?
I just think he's one of these where he's give his word. He's give his word to the owner by, look, I'll sign this contract and I'll honour that contract. I think he does get the fact of the fans. He gets the city. The fans love him for that. I mean, he's got flags all over the ground.
Does he live in a city?
I think he lives up there, yeah. I think...
He doesn't. His family and all that don't live.
well, his family's down there.
Merseyside, aren't
Yeah.
Don't know where, aren't
So,
I saw you shaking your head, mate. You don't think he'd resign?
No, I don't. I think Rafa, as Steve mentioned earlier, he used the word he gets Newcastle. I think he understands the fans. The job he did last year, coming 10th, the bond with the fans is now so strong. And I think Rafa sees a potential as well. It's a magnificent club. It's a real theatre of football. And get it right at Newcastle, and Rafa can see it. And I think they have a world-class manager.
But is it a club with great potential if you don't have the funds to spend?
Well, I think
in its current guise,
And
is it a great
it doesn't
club?
look like he's going to get the funds, and you can see, and it's clear in his interviews, he's no chance of that ever going to be,
well, the
going to be
manager hasn't
happening.
getting the funds. I mean, Benitez has turned around and sort of said, look, he would love this to be a 5-10-year plan. He's looking at the ground. I mean, the ground needs work on. The academy needs working on. I mean, I was looking. There was a picture on social media the other day, and it was, fans go to the ground. They pay the hard-earned money, for a ticket to watch the game or a season ticket, and the facilities, i.e., the toilets, they're an absolute. I mean, they're disgusting, and that shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't happen anywhere around the grounds. But fans look at that and think, well, hold on a second. I've paid all this money for my ticket, and this is what we're putting up with. And then they can see the funds not getting spent on the pitch. They can see the funds not getting spent at the academy. And obviously, Mike Ashley seems to be in a position where he isn't bothered anymore, and the club seems to be getting neglected.
But to me, Mark, it looks like a Mexican standoff.
Yeah,
it does,
that's
and that's my point. What gives? Something has to give Jeff here, and to the fans not show. It's their beloved club, and the Geordies and their passion for football is well known, but something has to give. Because you mentioned the figures earlier. There's money there, been involved in the Premier League, there's funds, there's money available. Where is it? If it's not
where's
being
that
spent...
123 initial money going? I don't understand where that goes.
I would also challenge you in saying that Rafa is the club's biggest asset. It's not. It's being in the Premier League and the money that comes with it. And if after 7 or 8 games they look like they're going out, what does Mike Ashley do? As you said, they would...
But he's done it before. He's been relegated.
You don't think he'd hesitate?
No, look, I'm not saying here get rid of Rafa, because I'm not sure he'd want to pay him the money.
No, I think there's a clause in there. I think it's about 6
million.
million.
I don't think he'd want to pay him the money, and I don't think Rafa would want to leave.
But weighed up against survival, if
but
Mike Ashley thought he could
you can
bring
get rid of
somebody
all
in...
your high earners, and then if you go down to the Championship, you offload them again, and then your budget is still high in the Championship. You'll go back up, and then you can start refreshing.
Which he's done before.
A lot of clubs are doing. That's why Fulham can go and spend 100-odd million.
Well,
that's why, because their wage bill is nowhere near like what the others is. So all that money coming in allows you then to go and hit hard and go and bring these players in. The problem you have when you have 3, 4, 5 years in the Premier League is your wage bill then is just ridiculous. So your money then for transfers are nowhere near the level or what you'd expect to, like we've seen from Crystal Palace, like we've seen from Swansea. You become a stalemate where it's like literally our wages are so big.
Yeah.
Now we're in a position where what do we do from now? We can't go any higher. Now we're just going to be fighting relegation. Now we just got to make sure we just stay in the league and just keep afloat.
But in Fulham and Wolves, you've got owners who have come out with clear plans, clear structure. This is what we're going to do, and they're following through with their word in terms of facilities, off the pitch and on the pitch, but they're providing world-class players. Newcastle deserve that as well. That job of Rafa coming 10th last year was outstanding.
Yeah,
it was outstanding.
He said himself it was a miracle. I think that's an understatement.
Absolutely. It's a magnificent job, a world-class manager. Recognise what you've got and how hard it would be to replace him.
Well, if you think they were 10th, I mean, they had Dubravka, the goalkeeper, they'd bought Hosselu, and then they had Kennedy on loan. So the rest of the team was the team that got them up from the Championship. So to finish 10th, that's why I'm surprised that, Ashley doesn't go, look, we're not, as I said, we're not asking for £100 million, just money to compete with other clubs, and that could actually point the club in a right direction and give the fans a little bit of hope.
The problem is that when there are problems like this, ultimately it comes out on the football pitch. Yeah. When you look at the statistics behind the start they've made to this season, they make for awful reading for Newcastle fans. They really are poor in terms of chances created, in terms of shots, just everything. They rank bad figures.
But you go into the Chelsea game and you lose the likes of Shelby and Lascelles. They haven't got the strength of depth in the squad to lose those types of players.
Well, I think that was one of the major problems. I mean, I think there were 6 players that he'd lost, but you would say there was 3 players definitely that would be in that starting 11. One was Kennedy, but he can't play against his parent club. One of them is Shelby, who sort of pulls the strings in midfield, and the other one's the leader, the captain in Lascelles. Obviously, he goes and plays a defensive way, which it gets criticised, sort of nationwide by people. But it was kind of a needs must, and this is about how we have to play. Look, it's not pretty, but they just need to pick up points.
But he done it last year.
He did it last year against Man City.
But with the players. But he had Shelby there.
Yeah, but...
He's done it against Man City. He's done it a few times.
Well, I don't think... if when you've got the players that Newcastle have got, and again, I'll say this, I think they're excellent pros that do everything that Rafa says to the letter. But the likes of Newcastle at this particular moment, and other clubs, if you go toe-to-toe with the big boys, it's going to be a bad day for you. Now, everybody was criticising Newcastle about they only had X amount of percent and stuff like that, but they got beaten, they didn't do this and do that, but they were still in the game. Huddersfield played Manchester City, I think they had 5% more when they played Man City. They got beat 6-1. Now, it's all very well people sort of saying they should have had a go, but I bet there's nobody in that Huddersfield dressing room turning around after they've been pumped 6-1 saying, well, lads, we give it a go, because lads will...
No, but they didn't give it a go. They sat everyone behind the ball, and they got what they deserved from the game. They were beyond negative.
They were still trying to put men forward where Newcastle weren't until the latter stages.
Look, you're in tune with the Toon Army, with the fans. Graham Souness made the point, the only reason they accepted that performance was because of their dislike of the owner and their support for the manager. Is that a fair observation?
I think it probably is. I think, if you looked at it and if it was maybe Graham that had done it, I think if it was Sam Allardyce or whether it was Pardew or whether it was Steve McLaren, but I think the fans kind of understand the predicament more so, I suppose, with Rafa Benitez than they did. But having said that, when you look at Souness, when you look at Allardyce and the other managers, they did have a strong squad. Stronger than what this one is. This one's not the strongest squad. They've got some good pros, but the squad is not strong. So they can understand it more because they feel as though Rafa does get the club and does get the fans and the fact of the squad.
And they've got to trust him as well, haven't they? Refer back to last season again, the credit he earned for the job last season. Two rights should trust him. I think I'm sure the fans do, Steve.
Absolutely. But, I mean, as I say, they sing his name all the time. There's flags and stuff like that. And Rafa's clever. Let's be honest. He's very good with the media and how he gets kind of things out. But as I said, the fans just feel as though it would be nice for that little bit of hope, a little bit of point the club in the right direction, because they feel as though they've got the right man at the head of it, i.e. Rafa Benitez, but not the one above him. And unfortunately, he's the most important one.
Well, he's the one who makes the decision. There's nobody going to get Mike Ashley out other than Mike Ashley. So I can't see where this is going to change.
No.
The only way I can see it is if the fans stop going.
That's the key,
if
isn't
the fans stop going.
Well, you've seen it at
It's
Blackpool,
difficult too because how
isn't it?
much they love their club. And, just my experience of playing there, that would be heartbreaking to see. But it's become to a situation now where it's become a standoff. I agree. Rafa hasn't been given the money. Listen, I've always been a big fan of Mike Ashley, business-wise. I think he's an incredible businessman. But
this is separate.
This is separate. I completely agree.
So are you critical of him as an owner?
The position Newcastle now have found themselves in with Mike, something has to give now. Something has to, whether, I don't know what happened with a new owner coming. Look, he needs to sell the club now. It needs to move on. It needs new investment. It needs someone who's willing to push the club forward, because it's a special football club. And it's got to that stage now where something needs, this is from me from the outside, I'm not as in tune as what you are now, is I always say, well, where are these owners that are buying other football clubs? Why wouldn't you want to go and buy Newcastle? So is there a problem with, does he want too much money for the football club? If there was, and you have a lot of money and you're looking to invest in the Premier League, you won't find many clubs better than Newcastle to go and buy.
I'm uncomfortable even talking about fans not going to their
football.
I mean, very uncomfortable.
They are doing a protest outside his company, but you know...
What difference does that make to Mark Ashley?
I think...
But financially, it's not going to hurt him.
Well, even, I mean, apparently it doesn't make a massive dent financially, even if it's a full house, apparently. But, you know, the fans love the club. You know, they want to see the players. They want to see the players win. They want to get behind the players. They want to support the manager.
Could you imagine a game? Can you imagine him not going to a game on a Saturday?
But Steve, you mentioned words like passion and emotion with the Geordie crowd and how much the club means to them. I don't see it with the owner. I don't know what he feels for the club.
Yeah.
You mentioned Rafa gets the fans. Does the owner get the fans? I just don't see it. Because that club demands a level of passion, a level of support.
It was mentioned earlier on in our conversation. I don't think the owner will be that disappointed if the club went down. Don't think it would be, because you look at the prize money. If you do bounce back, I mean, you know, winning it is actually, I think you earn less money than actually coming up in the final playoff. I think, what was it, 170 million this year, the highest, you know, paid game in history. And he would love for something like that to happen, but
yeah, when you have a crowd as big as Newcastle, I don't think it would hurt you that much.
No,
financially, I don't think it would.
So, what do we expect Rafa's approach to be away to Manchester City?
I think the same as what it was against Chelsea.
I agree. I think he'll be very pragmatic. I think he'll do what he has to do to try and get a result or get a point for Newcastle.
Yeah, good luck with that. Won't happen.
Yeah, but he has to prepare his team and the experience and the quality of Rafa. I think Craig, he'll go and do what he did against Chelsea and set his team out to try and get
Is it damage limitation?
That's a strong expression, Jeff, but yeah, it is. He recognises the quality
anybody.
of...
It's not against Manchester City, they're that good.
The quality of the squad of Man City, the quality of your opponent, you've got to be realistic, and Rafa's going to set his team up. With his experience and his knowledge of the game, I think he'll do that.
But what is realistic then? So sitting everyone behind the ball, not getting a touch, getting a tiny bit of the ball all game, watching the other team just play around you, and you're saying that's realistic? Because to me that isn't. I would be so demoralised to walk off that pitch knowing I've just lost. All right, it might have been only 1 or 2, but yeah, great defensive work. I didn't touch the ball. I only touched it 3 or 4 times. Didn't get an opportunity to go and attack. Just watching them basically keep the ball away from us demoralised me that much. I walk off the pitch thinking, is this where I've got to? Is this
I
where
can
my
understand where you're coming from.
We're all better than a 5-0 hiding.
Go and have a go.
I think so, because in the dressing room...
No, but if I lost and we said, no, look, we lost anyway, but we went and had a go. We went and tried to cause them some sort of problems. At the end of the day, they're miles better than us. We have to accept that. We move on to the next. We're not going to get... you know, whether we get relegated or not, it's not going to be determined here. But the confidence I can take off the back of that leading on to playing the other teams, because now you'll say, OK, you've played this team, you played Chelsea, you played Man City, but you've spent huge parts of the game without touching the ball. But by the way, now we've got Crystal Palace, or we've got, I don't mean to say, like, it could be any team.
Yep.
We've got, say for instance, Fulham now just got promoted. You got them at home. Now we got expected to have the ball. Now we've got to go and flip that. We've got to go and turn it around. Now we're expecting to be on the front foot. But by the way, you haven't been for the last 3 or 4 games.
But we said earlier, Craig, that the players trust the manager. He's earned their respect and they trust him.
You know what?
What
you've said there.
As a manager, trust the players.
I mean,
You've got to trust me now when I say it's time for a break. So.